Hi everyone. I wanted to give you a brief overview of what I was looking for your abstracts and sources for tomorrow. Just as a clarification, because I've had a couple of students email me about what the abstract should look like. The abstract, you want to think of it as an introduction paragraph or a draft of your paper. Okay, so if you were writing one paragraph of what you knew so far that you were going to write about, what would that paragraph look like? What do you want to say about this particular topic? What have you discovered so far from your sources? And what do you plan on writing about as far as your argument is concerned? Do you have a working thesis statement? And as I said in a previous video, or I may have said in a previous video, you do not have to stick to this thesis statement, okay? So this is part of the drafting process. Tell me what you have so far, what you plan to focus on, and what you found out from your sources. That is an abstract. It may be closer to what some of you may have heard of as a proposal for a paper. So if that makes it sound a little less, a little bit less of finalized, if you will, then think of it that way. This is your proposal as to what you are going to do and what you have decided that is going to be your research topic, okay? The other thing I wanted to show you is the OWL Purdue website. I don't know if all of you are familiar with it, so I just wanted to show you that. So this is Purdue Online Writing Lab, their website for Purdue University, and it is an excellent resource for all kinds of formatting styles. I have gone ahead and Googled MLA OWL Purdue to get to this particular page. This is the MLA Formatting and Style Guide. Okay. Now, I know that some of your sources that you're finding through the library databases, the library database will suggest how to cite those sources. And Corey Paulus, our reference librarian, said at the end of each of those videos that you want to make sure that you check your MLA format. This is how you would do that, okay? So this particular website gives you all kinds of information on how to cite a paper and properly format it for MLA, Modern Language Association, okay? So I'm actually going to go back up. This is talking about just an overview of creating a works cited. And I want to go to the MLA Formatting and Style Guide, the basics. Okay, so here's some basic in-text citation rules, talking about how to cite an author. If you have a page number, you always put the page number in parentheses. If you have mentioned the author in this sentence, you do not need to put the author's last name in parentheses. If you have not mentioned the author in the sentence, you do need to place the author's last name in parentheses and the page number. So if you have, I'm going to keep going down here. If you've got no known author, then you can put the work's title in parentheses. You only need to do this if you have not referred to that work in the sentence. So keep that in mind. Okay. And then it keeps on going as to giving you suggestions as to how to cite, or not suggestions, but guidelines. Guidelines is a better word for this, how to cite different sources. So here's multiple authors. If you have two authors, more than one author, then you put both last names in parentheses with the page number. If there are no page numbers, if this is an HTML text, then you only put the last name in there. But if you have a PDF, you need to put page numbers for that journal article or that ebook. If there are page numbers, go ahead and put them. Okay. So if you have two works by the same author, you put the title of the work in parentheses before the page number, okay? And I'm going to keep going. Indirect sources. Let's say that you like a quote that is used by another author that is in the article that you are reading. Like the article's by Jana Smith, and Janice Smith uses a quote by Dan Wiseman, okay, then you would quote it as such. Um, so if Dan White is the one that you, or Ravitch, let's say Dan Ravitch is the one that you want to quote, then you're saying Ravitch argues that high schools are pressured to act as, quote, social service centers, and they don't do that well, unquote. QTD in Wiseman. Wiseman would be the article that you got this from, or I said if Janice Smith is who you're reading, that would be the article you got it from. So Smith would be in parentheses and then the page number. This would be whoever is actually saying the quote. Okay. All right. I'm going to keep going and see if there's anything else. As you can see, they've got recommendations on electronic sources, so you want to check that out. And also multiple citations. If several different scholars say something similar, you can paraphrase what has been said by those authors and then put several authors in parentheses with a semicolon. Okay. Okay. So that is in-text citation. Very important. If you do not have in-text citation for your papers, then you're not properly attributing your sources. Okay, so then you will not get a good grade on the assignment. It's an F paper if there are no in-text citations. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're citing text appropriately. All right, so for the works cited page, it's got a basic format here, and then it goes through and it tells you how to cite all kinds of sources that you may have for your research paper. So I'm going to just click on the basic one. And we're going to keep going down. And it's going to show you how, it's some examples of how to cite. So we've got more than one work by an author, and it shows you how to do that. Then we have, and this is for a book, work with an author no known. This is just some basics for now. Let's actually click and see what else they have. Periodicals. A lot of your articles are going to be periodicals, or are going to be journal articles or from periodicals. So let's take a look. All right, I clicked on electronic sources instead of the periodicals because this is what I wanted to look for, okay? You are mainly going to be using articles from online scholarly journals that you find in library databases from a subscription service, okay? So this is what your MLA format could look like, okay? Most of the library databases provide this information, but I just wanted, and when you click on how to cite, and you cite an MLA, but I just wanted to give you an overview. So we've got the last name and the first name of the author here, then the title of the article, a period after the title, then the journal title. Journal title is very important. Don't forget the journal title, okay? A comma after the journal title. Notice how the journal title is italicized. Sometimes when those MLA citation machines do the work for you, they do not italicize the journals. The other thing that they don't do is they don't format it in Times New Roman 12-point font. Y'all, change the font to Times New Roman 12-point font. You don't realize Dr. Keller, as well as all of our other colleagues, we're always having to go through the MLA handbook and cite everything on our own. And so it is a great luxury that you have a citation generator that you can just go back and then check to make sure that this computer got things accurate. So volume 50, comma, number 1, comma, the year, then the page numbers. Yes, you need the page numbers if you have a PDF of this. And ProQuest. ProQuest is the database, okay? So that would be the same as MLA International Bibliography. Or Literary Reference, Literature Resource Center. If you got something in Fetch, you don't need to put Fetch here, okay? And access date. All right, so provide that date of access if you wish. So it's not required anymore. In the previous MLA style guide, it was required. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Let's see. Don't need any of that. Here. This one is if you found an online scholarly journal through searching on the web through maybe Google Scholar. And the reason that it's different is because it does not cite that database that you had here, okay, Wiley Online Library or ProQuest. That's how I know that you went through the library's databases to find these articles. Okay, all right. See, if you find a reputable website that you want to use, such as the learner.org website, okay, this is how you would cite that website. And you would go through and find out as much information as possible for that website and include that information here. Let's see, anything else? Oh, let me go back up. It has a nice page on formatting quotations as well. So, like I said, you want in-text parenthetical documentation for your sources. If you have a source that is listed in your works cited and then it is not referenced in your paper, that's an issue, okay? Because then I don't know when you're using that source. And that is something that it means that the student has been careless with documenting that source, okay? So that is going to be points off from the paper. If it was all of the sources, there was no in-text citation whatsoever, it would be an F. If there is a source or two that is on the works cited but is not mentioned in the paper, it's definitely still a C paper, if not lower. So you want to make sure that you have referenced all of your sources, okay? And if you haven't, there's a penalty for that. So depending on the severity of it. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. Short quotations gives you an example of how to incorporate short quotations. Yes, I do like short quotations when you only need a phrase, or you only need a sentence, or you only need 2 lines. That's a good idea, just to incorporate a couple of short phrases and then go back through and explain those phrases so you can break that sentence up. And it also shows you, look, how to cite poetry, right? Instead of prose. We've already done this, but here's a review. Yay! Okay, so that would be if you were writing on Tartuffe, for example, you would need to show the line breaks in between to show the rhyming couplets. Okay? And then finally, long quotations. You should not have too many long quotations in this paper. If you need one quote, for quotations that are more than 4 lines of prose or 3 lines of verse, you want to place it in a freestanding block of text and omit quotation marks, and then you tab over. And you can go through this website to see this. This is something, it's kind of reverse logic, okay? So the period goes before in a block quote, and there are no quotations because you have offset this quote by tabs. So you don't need the quotation marks to show that. I would not use many block quotations. In fact, you could get through the whole paper without using any long block quotations. When you use a long block quotation, I expect you to spend as much time explaining that long block quotation in some ways. Otherwise, it looks like, I don't know, you got to 5 pages and you decided that you needed a long block quotation to make it to 6 pages. Okay. That is that is kind of doing a shortcut, right? And so it's relying too much on the source instead of relying on your own writing. So you want to try to break that long block quotation up. If you really like the whole quote, sometimes you can break it up into 2 parts and then explain both. And then, wow, it looks like you are having a conversation with that particular critic or author instead of relying on that author to do all the work for you. Okay, so that's a trick of the trade. Okay, adding or omitting words in quotations. If you omit words, you use the ellipses. If you add words, let's say that something wasn't clear and you needed it to, if something's not clear, then you would actually, sorry, I was looking here. you could put a few words in brackets to make that sentence more clear. Now, why would you do that? Well, let's say that that particular sentence, the individuals, is referring to something that was in a previous sentence, and you don't want to take both sentences and quote both sentences. That's the only time that you'd need to do something like that. Ellipses, let's say that you really like this sentence and then the end of the other sentence, or this is a really long sentence and you just need part of it, then you would put ellipses here to show that this, hey guys, this is not the entire sentence. Only do this if it's not changing the idea of the sentence, okay? It's not changing the idea of the paragraph. All right. So, and the same with poetry and poetry here. They're showing how you can do that as well. Okay. I think that's all I have for you on MLA formatting and how to make sure that you're properly attributing sources. There is, let's see, there are a couple of other, good guidelines in this. There's a sample paper. Here's a sample paper, okay? So, and it goes through and it shows you all of the things that make an MLA, such as the MLA header here, and the 1-inch margins, and the double spacing. I did have one student ask me if it was single spaced or double spaced, y'all, for the 6-page research paper and the works cited, which is the additional page, okay? So you can take a look at that sample paper. So if we're looking at these papers, this first one I think is a good example of how to write a great introduction and also talk about the research that the student has found and what is setting her argument apart from the research. Now, if you find that you have something small to add, that's great. This is a great example of how to do this, or something totally different than what the other scholars have said. This is also a great example. It's also a nice example of how to synthesize research. If you feel that your contribution in this paper is going beyond what we discussed in class and just reporting on what you found. You're making an argument, but it's also built on other scholars' work, okay? So if you're doing that, I think this is a good example to look through. The other thing that I like about these research paper examples is that it has this nice little gloss, if you will, on the side that tells you what the student's doing well. And what the student is doing well in this particular paragraph is she's concisely summarizing the story's conclusion in the first paragraph, which ends by stating the main claim the essay will develop. So there's a thesis statement at the end of the first paragraph, and it's clear from the very beginning what she's going to be focusing on for this entire paper. Okay, there's not too much focus on plot summary in general. Okay, so next up, you have this paragraph is an amazing paragraph, okay? I want you to take a look at this paragraph and really think about, I've got 3 different sources, for example. I have 6 sources total, but I've got 3 sources that actually say the same thing, and I want to be able to synthesize what these sources are saying. Or they say something that's similar, but it's not exactly the same. How do I incorporate all 3 of these sources? And then it looks like very smart that I have incorporated my sources and I've done a good job of incorporating at least 3, then I only have to incorporate 3 more, and I can rely on maybe 3 out of the 6 more heavily than some, but I've incorporated at least 3 of them in this paragraph to talk about what scholars think about this particular story. So she does a nice job of putting the scholars in conversation with one another. So you can take a look and see what I'm talking about there. Okay, then you can go through and take a look at the other annotations as to why this is a successful paper. And then I will answer any questions that you have about that if you do have any questions. Endnotes, this is something that you don't have to do. This is that's just a footnote that the student wanted to provide for readers. The works cited page is here. And notice that the works cited page is alphabetized. You want to alphabetize your sources, okay? So make sure that you've alphabetized your sources. And then here's another example that I like. This is an example where a student is focusing on the historical and cultural context of the yellow wall paper. And they're talking actually about Ware Mitchell's treatments, okay? and the way that Gilman writes about these treatments in the yellow wallpaper. So this is another example that has a very good focus and takes the reader through what that focus is going to be in that first introduction paragraph, and then summarizes one source, sticks to one source. It's about Mitchell himself, and that for that first paragraph, and actually summarizes it, provides some quotes. Look at all those quotes that are integrated so well and so smoothly, provides the page numbers for those quotes, and also paraphrases and summarizes some of those. Then there is an end statement at the end of that paragraph where the student is synthesizing that research, and so they are not relying on the quotes to do all of the work for them. This is really important. It's key. One thing I did want to mention about the other paper that I would fix is this student has a block quote here, and I told you, you may have one block quote, but that's the only you can get by without having any block quotes. But this student had a block quote. If you do a block quote, or even if you were just incorporating a quote, never end a paragraph on a quote or a block quote, because then it looks like you're making the scholar who you're quoting do the work for you. You always want to have an end statement at the end of the paragraph that synthesizes what that particular person is saying, or explains synthesizes what those scholars are saying, or explains what that particular person is saying. Okay, so I'm going to go back down to the other paper and see if there's anything else I need to point out. This one just does a nice job of focusing on how to incorporate historical documents and cultural context into a paper, as well as give examples from how that connects to the story itself. So the student has used Charlotte Perkins Gilman's autobiography, and then she goes and switches back, or he switches back. I can't remember if it was a he or she. He or she switches back to telling me, or telling the reader, how this connects to the story itself. Okay, so in this assignment, you were incorporating research, but you're also explaining and giving examples from the text as to how that research connects to scenes in Othello, for example. If you're writing about the symbolism of the handkerchief or Iago as a vice figure, you should be referring to scenes in Othello that prove that point, and then incorporating authors who talk about that symbolism, or who talk about Iago and what they have to say about Iago. So it's a balance between analyzing the text and showing how you are closely reading the text, and also putting yourself in conversation with other critics who have also written about the text. Okay, so email me if you have any questions after looking through these examples. And no, your paper does not have to look exactly like this. You are going to be writing on a totally different text, but I do think that this is a good example of, a shell of a paper, like for the format. If I'm writing a paper for a literature class, these two examples are good starting points for how to incorporate research and how to cite sources properly. And also take a look, they both got those works cited pages that are really nice. Now, this is an older MLA format, so do follow the OWL Purdue format for your format. Okay, thank you very much. Hope you have a good day.